When was the last time you took a leap of faith, trusting that everything is going to work out? Do you crave growth, or are you merely content with the status quo? If you want more out of your life, out of your career, and out of your relationships, you are in the right place. Take the leap and discover how to create a life by design rather than living it by default. Real success starts with you. Now here's your host, Colleen Biggs.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Take the Leap. As always, I am your host, Colleen Biggs, and Happy New Year, everyone. It is so exciting to be in 2023. What the heck? Where did 2022 go? I don't even know. But I know this. I have been a stepmom for the biggest portion of my life. And today we have the pleasure of talking with Amy Stone all about building your happy home life as a stepmom. Hey, calling all stepmoms out there, being a stepmom isn't always about having a happy home, but that's okay because we're going to give you tips and tricks and tools and things you can use in perspective so you can change all that, because Amy and I have done that. We have been through it. We've had all kinds of stuff slung at us. Trust me, we'll give you some stories today. We're going to get into all of that in just a minute. But before we do, I want to thank the sponsor of today's show, BizBolster Web Solutions. Imagine if you increase the visits to your website and had a consistent flow of new business. BizBolster Web Solutions designs websites and sets up tools that not only attract new prospects, but also starts building the know, like, and trust factor for those prospects when they land on your website. Through exceptional website and targeted SEO, our clients are not only found online, but are also able to convey their area of expertise as well as the what's in it for me to their prospects. Imagine if it was that easy for you to increase sales to your business by driving more traffic to your website. Well, it is. Be sure to visit BizBolster Web Solutions at bizbolster.com to download your free SEO guide and schedule your discovery session today. And by the way, that SEO guide is an amazing guide on just easy tips that you can apply today for you to be able to increase your SEO. What does SEO mean? SEO equals visibility. It's the way that you drive traffic to the hub of your business, which is your website. Y'all know what the Leap community is about. It's about visibility. It's about being seen. It's about being heard. And by the way, Mel Robbins' book, the one that we're reading in our book club, The High Five Habit, did you guys know that she said that is a foundational, through research, that is a foundational need that every single one of us have: to be seen, to be heard, and be loved. So if you're not being seen and you're not being heard and you're only being loved, you're missing out on 2/3 of what it is that you need in your life. So make sure you step up today and join the Leap community. And you can find that at colleenbiggs.com/ or colleenbiggs.net. I don't even know why I said .com, because I still haven't found the lady who has the .com out there, because she's not on Google anywhere. But if she's out there, please give me a call, because I would like to take the .com from you. I would like to have that, please. So I'm colleenbiggs.net / community. So make sure you get out there today and join the community and contact BizBolster Web Solutions and download your free guide. Okay, ladies, here we go. We are going to talk to Amy Stone. But before I do, I want you to learn a little bit about her, and then we'll dive into her stories and why she does what she does today. Amy Stone is a certified life coach who helps adults in blended families. She was a stepmom before she was a mom. I was too. It was really tough. Today, she's a wife, a mom, a stepmom, and a grandma. Amy uses her personal life experience and coaching skills to help flustered and overwhelmed step-parents who want to reduce drama and go from chaos to calm and happiness in their lives. Amy, welcome to the show.
That sounded so good. Thank you so much, Colleen, for having me.
You sound amazing, Amy.
I loved it. I was like, look how great I sound. Oh, gosh.
And that's exactly what you do. Sometimes it's fun just to hear our bio and let it land, because it is our accomplishments. It's what we've done. It's who we are. And it's what we do to make an impact today. So welcome to the show, Amy.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I have to ask you, Amy, you and I have had a lot of conversations about being a stepmom because I'm going to tell you, it's one of the hardest things I've ever been through in my life. Having a baby was so much easier. It was very short-lived pain. And I had the baby, and raising the baby was so much easier than raising someone else's baby. So what happened? Go take us back in time. Let's roll the tape back. Take us back in time when you first became a stepmom and what that was like for you.
Oh, good. This is a great place to start. So I was young, and I was not looking for a permanent relationship. I was in my mid-20s, and I went to a happy hour and I met a guy. And I was getting out of another relationship. I mean, I really honestly was not looking for a serious commitment, but as life happens, that happens to be who I fell in love with and who I chose as a partner. And he had been married before, and he had 2 young kids. This was not a secret, right? It was a non-issue when I first found out about it because my focus was not on forever. I was young. I was like a child almost, even though you don't feel that way when you're in your mid-20s. I was confident that I knew everything I needed to know as you are when you're 20
I became a stepmom at 19.
So you were younger than me.
When I married my first husband, I was 19 years old, and he had a little boy, and I was like, what?
Right. And I mean, I just didn't know. I didn't know what I was committing to. And people would tell me, they would try and give me hints that I was taking on a commitment. But I truly believe that you can't understand some of these things until you're in it. And it's very easy to judge ourselves for what we didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that we can. I mean, maybe some people can, but I look back, I can remember people telling me that things would be challenging and just thinking, oh gosh, they're right. And I equate it very much to having a new baby. And I think that you and I had a little bit of this conversation before. Everybody in the world tells you that they're not going to sleep. This is not a secret. And yet when we experience it, it's like a revelation. It's like, oh my gosh, they weren't kidding. This little person doesn't sleep.
Never sleeps.
It's really hard. And stepping into being a stepmom was a similar realization to me. I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought the kids were cute. I really was in love with this guy. And it was much more complicated and much more emotionally challenging than I expected.
Yeah. I mean, let's just get real. Women out there, we are very nurturing beings. It's in our DNA, from centuries ago, going way back to the beginning of time, having babies and nurturing babies or nurturing babies that even aren't ours, other people's children, right? The nurturing factor is just in our being. It's who we are. So naturally, you want to nurture this child. You want to love this child, and you want the child to love you. And sometimes that relationship can be easy with the child, but can be extremely difficult with the ex that's still in the picture, depending upon, I mean, there's every scenario in the book, right, Amy?
That's right.
Yeah. You could have this great co-parenting that's happening, and then the child hates you.
Right.
Because they think you broke up their parents and you weren't even around, or they just want their parents back together. And so they hate you. Like you did nothing, but they hate you. Right. Or you could have a situation where the child absolutely loves you, but the ex-wife hates you. And so because her mom hates you, she's caught between the middle because she thinks you're a great person. She loves you. And I find that these children just get pulled in the directions, and they're always the ones that lose. Always the ones that lose. We don't ever lose because we are adults and we can control our emotions. We can see things through a different perspective. It's always the child that loses in any situation like that.
They have the most exposure for sure.
They
have
do.
the most exposure. One of the things, I agree with you 100%. One of the challenges of being in this space and as a stepmom looking for support and looking for community, right? One of the challenges is that each situation is alike, but also can be very different. And that's not just true for blended families. That's true for every family, right? So you've got, and people will make generalized broad stroke advice that may not apply to you at all. You can be, and you alluded to this, people have been step parents since the beginning of humanity, right? There's no time in the past where this didn't exist. One of the things that is a buzzword for me that people will try and make this a modern problem. I'm like, show me the time in history where this didn't happen. Show me the time, because I don't think it exists, right? That's like a problem with nostalgia.
Men were sleeping with like a lot of women and having a lot of babies. And that was that's women what they're built for.
Right. And women used to die all the time.
Yeah.
And much
other
more
moms
often,
had to take care of the babies.
100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This has always been around.
Yeah.
And, but the situations can be very different. And where I think that becomes a struggle for step parents and stepmoms is that difference and the challenges can be an obstacle for looking for support and looking for help. You can really feel like an outsider in every situation. So, there are like unlimited ways that blended families form. There are unlimited ways that people become step parents. Divorce could be a thing. There may not have been a first relationship. Somebody can die. Somebody can have stepped out. All of these combinations of things. And I just listed those, but there's a lot. There's every time I would think that I would know all of them, something new will come up. And what's super interesting for those of us who have been in this for a little while, and I don't know if you're like me, is that over time, this made me very, very inclusive and non-judgmental when I would run into other people, right? Yeah. And that's probably one of the reasons I ended up doing what I'm doing, is that people began to safely approach me with the understanding, like, so I feel a little awkward bringing this up, but here's what happened. Here's what's happening in my family. And then I could be a sounding board. I could be a person to tell who wasn't going to say, oh, well, that's not right. You shouldn't do that.
Here's why I think you're the expert on this. When I was going through divorces, dealing with exes, I dated someone once who had never been married, but I had children. And that was even harder, I think, sometimes because it was my children, but he constantly told me all the things I was doing wrong as a mom. And I'm like, but you're not even a parent. That was
I knew a lot more about parenting before I was a parent. Got to admit, I had a lot of really, really strong opinions about parenting.
Of course you did. Of course you did. So here's the other thing I want to, I would love to dive in a little bit to your story, and why I think you're the expert is because you've lived through it. When like you said, the support systems, they're out there, but people aren't tapping into them. When I was a stepmom, I tapped into my girlfriends. Those were who I talked to. By the way, they weren't divorced. By the way, they weren't stepmoms. By the way, they weren't living through it. So it's like talking to one of your best friends that doesn't have kids about your struggles as being a mom. She can't even relate. She can't even relate. So talk to us about a situation that you had gone through that you saw it going a totally different direction, or that was just horrific for you. And then maybe how you turned that around. I would love to give real situations of what you've been through and emotions that you felt, because, listeners, they want to get to know you, Amy. So share with us, because that's also going to help them realize that it's possible, that some progression is possible.
Progression is definitely possible. And one thing that I like to tell people, my stepkids are grown. So when I met them, they were young, 4 and 8, not babies, but 4 and 8.
Yeah.
And that's, the 4-year-old was young enough that he doesn't remember anything where I was not a part of his life, right? The 8-year-old definitely remembers her parents being together. And that is a distinction. Like, so one of the complications of working with this is it really does matter how old the kids are, right?
Yeah.
People are getting married and divorced and separating and recoupling for a variety of reasons all through the life course. I think you may have been the person who told me this. The fastest growing group of divorce is the silver or the gray divorce. Like, so it's 50-year-old and up people who are getting divorced. That's
because what happens, because their kids are grown and out, and then they're finally like, I can't live with you anymore. We only stay together for the kids. For the kids, exactly. Well, that's a different situation. Those kids are different than a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, right? Totally.
But, totally, right? Those kids, they're, those can be your friends. Those can be your friends, right?
They're older. Sure.
They don't need a juice box.
No. And they're not looking for a mom. They have a mom,
right, exactly.
And you don't need to mother them.
Right. Yeah. So you asked me this question, which is an excellent question. My mind immediately went blank the way you forget how to breathe when the doctor asks you to breathe normally. I'm like, what hardship? I've never had any hardship. So, but I'll give you a couple. Probably I was a child-free stepmom, right? There's a different situation when you have experience raising children and if you don't. I didn't have any kids yet. I was operating under the presumption that having been a child at one point gave me the experience to be with other children. That's an inaccurate way to start,
Totally.
but we do a lot go through it. I was completely unprepared, and I didn't know it, for how young children are like the black hole of available resources and time. I just really did not know. I really, really thought that the small children should be a little bit more independent, have a little bit better manners, maybe sleep in a little later in the morning, do a better job sleeping during the night, be better communicators, require less imagination time. There's no limit to the amount of resources that small children will take up in a family. Like, so in my blended family, we ended up with 4 adults. You could have provided 25 adults and these kids would have been like, yay, more people to spend all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a problem for me. And it showed up as a problem for me in a really, really common way, in that I really took it personally when things were not the way I thought they should be. And a huge part of my own journey is learning that lesson over and over again, that so many of the things that were going on that I was taking deeply personally, really not about me, really just not about me at all. Right. And so learning that process over and over again, was a part of it. So in the beginning, I was like, oh gosh, why does it take so much time? Like, why is every available moment when the kids are around about the kids? And I can look back after 20 years later and be like, because that's the way it is. You either have to create a framework where other people are stepping up and supporting the children so that you have free time, or it is just the giant 24-hour never-ending cycle of love, affection, juice boxes, laundry, dishes, activities. That's the grind of young kid life.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And, in my first marriage, I really didn't have any issues with the mom. She was, would drop off the child. We would see him. What was it back then? Oh my gosh, this was 30 some years ago. It was, they would drop them off, for every other weekend. That's what we had dad. That's what kind of had when dads had it, and so he was little, he was like 2 years old. And of course, I could take care of him and change his diaper and that type of thing. And I actually enjoyed that time with him and was super sweet to the mom. And that was one of my experiences. And then when I married my husband, I'm married to today, and we combined our children, 5, he had 5 and I had 2. And the ages ranged from 10 years old to 19 years old.
Yeah, it's a big spread.
There was a huge spread in there for these kids. And some of them were the same age. The 2 boys were the youngest ones at 10. So I had still had a pretty big impact in their life and had gone through high school graduations and college graduations and weddings and having children. And I think, my husband and I made this pact in the beginning, which was they have a mom, they have a dad, right? My kids have a dad, your children have a mom. However, under the rules of this house, we have to have house rules.
Yes.
It applies to every child that comes in. If it's a friend down the neighbor on the street, it has to do with if it's your child, my child, doesn't matter if you live here or don't live here, like rules, like you don't sit on the couch and eat in the living room. That's a simple rule, right?
Right.
And it's not like I'm saying you can't do it. And if they say, well, my mom lets me, it's like, okay. And at your house, you can do that. But the rules in this house for everybody that comes here, we don't eat in the living room. So you can't eat in the living room. Right. And so it just makes it a little easier when you have house rules versus your kids' rules, my kids' rules, because I had kids.
Right. And I call them house rules too. And you had existing house rules and you were used to applying them. I didn't have any when
you didn't have children.
And we all have like, hidden things that we're used to that we don't realize are our house rules, like that we set up from our family. And that's part of the just challenge of changing who you cohabitate with, right? Like, so like I'm real quiet at night. My husband is like a herd of elephants, right? That was an adjustment when we started living together. I was like, why do you not understand that you were really loud? And he's like, I'm not loud. And I'm like, how do you not know this about yourself? But that's just the process of living.
Because he didn't live with you before. He lived on his own, or maybe someone didn't tell him.
His family's all loud at night. It's like a difference in the families. I was advised, I got real actual advice that what I should do as a new stepmom is allow for the other rules to lead, like step back and let my husband parent with his wife, right? That's a common guiding principle. But where that doesn't work, in my experience, is with the house rules, because you're living in the same house. And so
well, you're living the
right.
rules of the husband and the ex-wife. So it's like
Right.
they're still creating the rules. And where do you fit in on that?
Right.
That has to hurt your self-esteem, your confidence as a
exactly.
stepmom, your value that you're contributing,
100%.
Your relationship with your husband. That affects all of that. Because you feel like you're an outsider.
I did. I described it when I finally came to my husband. I was like, I can't do this. I feel like a second-class citizen in my own house.
Yeah.
And that was never his intention. That was nobody's intention.
No.
He was not the person who suggested it to me. Like, I was working with, but I had to learn that. It's a thing that I often share with people how to do, right? Because sometimes we have an unknowing, like we don't realize we have this, but we have this self-pressure that we're trying to do this step parenting or the parenting thing the right way, right? So we will tell ourselves, oh, like if somebody says to you, you should let the parents do the discipline and the parenting, then we'll say, oh, well, that's the right way. So then what I need to do is subjugate myself and not get involved. If it upsets me, I must be doing something wrong. I'm not good at this. Like, there's something wrong with me. And that was hard for me. But what I realized was, it's like, listen, I live here. It is worthy. It's totally valid that I want to have a clean house. Like, and this is not because I'm a stepmom. This is not because I'm a weenie. There's nothing about this. This is just what I want in the house. And how are we going to make this work so that we do this? And the way I recommend is exactly what you're saying. House rules. One of the sticking points that people will sometimes get with this is what you said, which is like, hey, well, it's different at my mom's house, or it's different at the other parent's house. And here's the thing, right? It's different at every house. It's going to be different at grandma's house. It's going to be different at your Aunt Susie's house. It's going to be different at your friend Joey's house. Every house has its own rules. So kids are totally able to figure out that one house has one set of rules, and one house has another set of rules. And the thing that is really helpful for us, and I don't know if it was the same for you, is that we sometimes think the rules are clearer to the kids than it is. So there is a part in a blended family where you kind of have to sit down and be like, so what are the rules? Like, what are our rules? Like, what are we saying to each other? And what are we saying to the kids? Like, what are we saying to the kids? And it feels very institutional and like you're setting up a classroom or something. And that's a pretty good example. Like, when kids walk into the classroom for the first day, the rules are there. It's like class starts at this time and you sit in your chair. And so when you've got kids who are doing transition between two houses, it's not unreasonable to sit down and be like, hey, you may not have realized this, but we flush the toilets after we go to the bathroom. Like, I don't know what other people do, but that's going to be the rule in our house.
Yeah.
And, and then a piece that I alluded to earlier that I wasn't good at, that I had to learn, is just the awareness that small kids, and when I say small kids, I generally mean maybe under the age of 30, they're not going to get it right. Like, most of the time. And that's not because we're doing it wrong. That's because that's the way the world works.
You crack me up. It's so true. And I would love to add this, because I've lived through it. Your responsibility is not to tiptoe around the children.
Right.
Ever. Children need direction. They need leadership. They need rules, and they need boundaries. They just want to understand, where am I playing in between? Where am I? And once they know the boundaries, like the lines, then they're safe and they feel safe. When we don't create those boundaries and it's willy-nilly and they just don't know, they don't feel safe. So they're constantly going to be looking for ways to figure out what the boundaries are. And that's where you get a lot of the problems of behavioral problems. And we haven't even touched on if there's a grandparent involved, because that can be a whole nother dynamic that you have to deal with. Fortunately, I have never had a spouse pass away where then I've had the grandparents step in and feel like they're going to be the parent and make all these rules. But I know there are a lot of women out there that have, and they don't necessarily like what their mother-in-law is implying that they do with the children, or want all these, type of custody and visitation.
Well,
it's a lot.
And that happens. Like, one of the things that it's very easy to scapegoat the step family and the blended family and the step parenting as the source and the cause of all of these issues. But I know hundreds of people, you know hundreds of people. If your mother-in-law comes and stays with you for a period of time and is in your business, it doesn't matter the construct of your family. That is a hard situation. It's like, okay, listen, I back off a little bit, please. And
I had a friend asking me the other day, Amy, she said, don't you ever step in on your grandkids when your children are, disciplining them or not disciplining them? And I said, listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. I love all of my children equally, which is my children, my stepchildren. I love them all equally. And I said, every single one of them are different. And every single one of them are going to raise their children differently, because they're going to also then have a spouse that was raised differently, and they're going to agree on their family rules and how they raise their children. I abide by the family rules when I'm in their home. When my grandchildren come to my home, it's my house rules. I still have my house rules, and the rules still apply for grandchildren and the adult children and everyone else. So I will never step into my children's business and tell them what I think they're doing wrong or what I think they're doing right, because obviously I believe it's none of my business. It's their business. It's their family. And I'm there to help contribute to make life easier for them. That's why we're there, right? To love the kids, to make life easier.
And it can be hard though, right? We're talking about very broad strokes, right? So, that's pretty good, pretty simple when you're talking about juice boxes and Band-Aids, right? Sometimes we have disagreements with people in our family on foundational issues, right? And it does come up, these things. And then the families have to figure out how they're going to do it. So we're a couple of years out of the pandemic, right? But a really, really sticking point for, families, blended traditional, insert, the thing was, vaccinating the kids and who you were going to do and what. Yeah. And, so it's like you figure out what your values are. And then we have to figure out when we're going to keep our mouth shut. Right. Because like you said, it can be hard to see it sometimes, but sometimes it's not our job. And that's a hard thing of caregiving overall, right? Is figuring out when is the time that I step back and let other people do whatever it is that they want. Right. And, we celebrate that independence with very small kids, like the very first steps you take, yay, you crawl, you roll over, all of those things we celebrate. But it's harder when those first steps are moving away, driving the car, making big mistakes, stuff like that. But it's the same kind of thing. It's like, oh, wow. This is not my job.
It's important for us to step in when we need to, especially when I've seen this on both sides. My children lived with my husband and I, and the other children visited and were there a lot. And so we were always together as a family. And I remember my daughter and we used to have these blow up arguments. We are so similar. When she was a teenager, doors would slam, we'd be screaming at each other. And when I would go up to my room and my husband would be like, just go to the room and chill out for a little while, because she's got a door and I'm trying to get through the door to get to her. And he's trying to get me to go in another room and chill out. And then she comes out and wants to get to me, and he gets in between us and he's like, everybody just needs to chill out. Like,
we need a timeout.
Yeah. He's like, we need to let your mom chill out, because right now, if you go up there, your mom is going to kill you. This is not going to be a good situation. So, and she's like, you're not my dad. You can't, this is the common one. You can't tell me. He said,
you can't tell me what to do.
He said, I'm not your dad. You're right.
That's right.
But she is my wife, and I am seeing what's happening here. And I really think this is the best thing to do. And I'm not trying to be your dad. I'm just mitigating this situation that's happening under my roof in this house at this moment. And he did a really good job, of that. And so kids are always going to sling things at you to say, especially younger, you're not my mom. You're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do. And if it hasn't happened to you, it will. These are going to happen all the time. Yeah. In my philosophy, Amy, and I would love to hear yours, what I decided to do in this family dynamic was this. I was going to love these children unconditionally. That was it. I wasn't going to change my lifestyle for them because I had children. I'd been raising children. He had been raising children. We were going to continue with our lifestyle, the way our lifestyle is. I wasn't going to apologize to the children for anything that they thought I was doing wrong that I wasn't. And we decided just to show them how much a couple loves each other, to show them how much you can love children unconditionally, and how no matter what blood you have running through your veins, we're all one big happy family, including the stepdad, the stepmom, all of that. No matter what.
Mean, one of the things I don't know when I made the transition, and it's something I think a lot about, but one of the transitions I definitely made at some point of this is that I do think of my family as that whole big extended unit. Yeah. Like I am not, my husband has been divorced a long time. She's still a part of our life, his ex-wife.
Absolutely.
And my stepson just got married, and we were there the whole weekend together. Oh, yeah. So I think of that whole group, her family, I think of as a part of my family,
That's right.
and all of those things. Right. And that, who would have ever told me that? Like I had no idea, but I definitely think that's there. The way in my mind, I think we have very similar. I say, I start with love, like what feels like love here, right? Because sometimes as a caregiver and as a parent, what is loving doesn't feel very good in the moment, right? Like, so, when you've got a kid who's veering off into a problematic area and you have to institute changes in the house and so on and so forth, all those things that happen, taking people from adorable little babies who do everything that we tell them to because they don't have any words yet, up through grown adults. Sometimes the way we interact with the people in our families can be from love, but not feel great at the moment. Yeah. Right. And so, but it has to feel like love to me, right? Yeah. If I know that the reason that I'm doing this, hey, the reason I'm grounding you and you can't go to this party is because I love you and there's a lesson here and so on. And that's how I work through it. And the hidden thing there that I had to learn and have to work to practice is the person I love also is me. Like it can't be, I'm going to do this for you. And you talked about I'm not going to apologize for what I'm doing. That's love for yourself. Right?
That's right.
I love me. And so I have respect for me and compassion for me. And I know that I'm going to make mistakes and be imperfect. I love myself. And that's what fuels me being able to love other people.
I agree. There was one Christmas that I decided to, on Christmas paper, write a letter to every child in the family, the siblings, not their husbands or wives, but just every
right. You had
child,
to make a limit. You were like,
every
how
step,
many people?
So 7 of them. My
mother-in-law just called and she was like, where are we drawing the line this year? Like who's getting, when you have a big family, that's a conversation. Like, what are the rules?
People ask us all the time. They're like, do you guys have any of yours? Like you, and I was like, oh, we had 7 when we got together. Even if I could have had children at that point, A, I was way too old, and B, we had 7. Like that
was a lot.
I shouldn't even have to say anything after that. So I remember writing a letter to each one of them because there was a lot of tension in the family. I love them unconditionally. I will share this. It doesn't mean that his ex-wife had moved on emotionally, right, and that she was not accepting of our marriage and who I was, and that I was a big part of their life and that they loved me. We'll just leave it at that. But I wanted the children to know that no matter what was happening and no matter what they heard on either side, right? Because I would never talk ill about another person in my house ever, and they'll never hear it here. I wrote a letter to them about how much I love them, little things about them that I was so proud of them of, why I'm so happy to be part of their life, and how much I love their mother.
Oh, that's nice.
That changed a lot.
Right.
Because I don't think we ever sit and tell them, I'm not mad at your mom. I don't hate your mom. But they don't know because they're kind of in this middle and they're like, but I think they hate each other. And it's like, but they don't know what we're feeling if we don't verbalize it. So I think another lesson everyone can get out of today, Amy, is verbalize how you feel to the child and to the other people. I think it's very important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Communicate.
Communicate. And
teach your children to communicate.
Yeah. So many times, because I'm sure when you work with people, because this is the truth of humans, we're not as good at communicating as we think we are. Right.
And surely,
we make assumptions all day long, every day, that the person that we're existing with knows what we're already
Totally.
telling them. Right. And
Yeah.
that is very much like the root of a lot of miscommunications, and little tiny versions of that can blow up into giant family problems. Right. So when I was a teenager, I was delightful. I never did anything wrong. And this is the way I remember myself as a teenager. My father has a different recollection. And he and I actually ended up in therapy together, like when I was a teenager. And I don't know, my dad is dead, so I can't ask him. I don't remember what charming thing I did to make this happen. But we, just like in the movies, we would sit in this office with a therapist, and he was teaching us how to talk to each other. Basically, he was like, it was just like in the movies. It was like, what did you hear? Can you say something nice? Like it was awful. It was awful. I don't remember how many of these we did. But part of it I remember is at the end, my dad and I would both like go and have like a milkshake together and complain about the process. We were both so miserable with the process, but we did it several times. That part, though, of repeating back what you hear somebody say is like a life skill that I am thankful for every day. People will say to me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, so are you saying that this is the line for the produce? Like, what are you saying to me? And that re-communication of what it is so important, because we don't know. And
we think they hear.
We think they know, or we think they just know. And
yes.
One of the biggest and best, so kids who are transitioning, cohabitating between houses, right? Little kids will assume that you know everything that has happened in the other house, and they will talk to you as if you know, right? Yep. It's like it's like you should just know, and you don't know because you weren't there, and they don't know how to tell you, right? They just don't. Teenagers will assume that you know whatever is in their head.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Without anything, you say, hey, good morning. And they react however they're going to react. And you're like, oh, I wish that made sense. But I assume, like it's a part of being a human being. But that one little skill, which you demonstrated so lovingly with your family, of taking the time to get it out so they can see it. I saw a very touching thing on social media, which I love social media, which was like, those speeches that we give at people's funerals. We should do that. Like at birthday parties and dinner parties. We should tell people these things because, we don't. I wish we did, but we don't.
It was interesting. I used to text all my, I still do, but I miss some of them, like my in-laws, some of the son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. I don't catch everyone. And sometimes I make a mistake because there's 28 of us, right? So I make a mistake sometime and I don't catch all the grandkids every birthday, and I don't get a text out on the day, and it might be the day after. And one of my son-in-laws said, yeah, what happened with that? You used to text us every time on our birthday, and that was so cool. And
that's nice.
I was like, oh, I didn't realize how much it meant to that person. And then now I'm really screwing up, So it's the little things that matter. And that's why I'm bringing it up. It's the little things that matter. So we've talked a lot, all around all the areas today. And here's what it all comes down to. You need to have a support system of someone who's been through it, who knows it, who can guide you, who can give you the advice, who has been certified like you are, Amy, not your girlfriend who's never been through a divorce, never been a stepmom, never anything. And she's trying to give you advice and tell you what to do. Like I remember my girlfriend saying, girlfriends were like, why would you give him 50% of the time? Because he's the dad. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's 50-50. So it's 1 week on, 1 week off. That's absurd. You're supposed to have him way more than that. I'm like, why? That doesn't make any sense. But all my friends thought I was crazy because I did 1 week on, 1 week off. And I thought that was so much better for my children to switch on a Sunday and have a full week with a parent and then come back and switch. And they don't do this in between school thing, on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a half a day I was like, I'm just going to make this easy, but my girlfriends thought I was crazy and that I was giving him too much. And I was like, when did it become you have to hate your ex just because you're divorced? I don't understand that. So, and
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. And I'm not downplaying the anger, and I'm not downplaying the stuff like that, but there's, it can be harder than you would think to find people to support you in being happiness. Like, I mean, I talk about it. I'm like, I sell happiness. That's what I'm selling. I'm selling happiness. And the first line of support when you went to your girlfriends, which is actually pretty smart, but if you ask for help, the first line of support for people who are in family struggles is lawyers, doctors,
Oh yeah.
and religious
Therapists,
advisors, right?
Yeah. And then before you know it, like CPA stepping in
Right.
or whatever it's called, the
Right.
Child Protective Services, CPS is stepping in and you're like, whoa, hey, wait a minute. Like we're just a
Right.
normal family.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I dream of a world where there's a lot more support for people like this is how you work this out for yourself, like, and a designation. Because if you go to a dentist, he's going to look for problems in your teeth. That's what you're paying him for. If you go to a lawyer, I mean, listen, there's a lot of collaborative things coming up and there are great lawyers who will be like, hey, do you really want to fight about this? But their specialty is taking your money and fighting for you. Right.
That's right.
And they don't actually have a dog in that fight. And so when the question is, hey, if I want to be happy here, what do I do? It's harder to find a person who can answer that than you want. It's really easy for people to say, get divorced, throw it out the window, be angry, fight, throw money at it, diagnose the problem, blame other people. Those are the things that a lot of people have. And I am a little salmon swimming upstream saying, want to buy some happiness? Want to buy some happiness?
I love it.
Happiness.
That's what we're talking about today. So to all the stepmoms out there that are listening to this and you're just like, oh, that's me, or I've been through that situation, or I am drowning right now and I need some help. You can build a happy home life because Amy did and I did. And you just need to know what to do, like the steps to take. So Amy, tell them, how do they reach out to you? If you have anything that you want to give them, let them know that it's on your website or whatever you've got.
Absolutely. So I put everything in one spot. So my name is Amy and the name of my business is Amy Says So, which is a super cute play on the words, because I say so. So amysaysso.com is my website and I have resources there. I'd love to invite anybody who's interested into my community where I share, my lessons and my wisdom. And I have two things that are front and center on that website. One is the 10 lessons that I think I learned over 20 years of being a stepmom. And then the next is the 7 changes, the 7 action steps that I'm pretty sure I took that really did impact change. And so those are things that I give out like M&Ms. Happy to share them wherever people may want. And that introduces you into my community where I share all the other fun things that I offer.
All right, great. And I know you can also follow her on Instagram. You guys, if you want daily info from someone that you're hearing and you need to, if you're a stepmom and you need advice or you think that I could use the advice, or the inspiration or the motivation, then start following people like Amy, on her Instagram or message her at the Amy Says So on Facebook or follow her on LinkedIn, whatever your crack is of social media, go connect with her. Reach out to her.
It's so true. Whatever your little addiction on social media is. Yeah. I mean, social media is predominantly entertainment. And so, it's really good advice to message people. Like if you resonate with something that somebody puts on social media, it's like message them and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Because most of us who are there will reply and be like, here's where to go for that. I
use social media too for stream of information, like YouTube, and many of you probably use social media as a stream of information. So if you're a stepmom and you're not feeling like you've got the happiest home life and you're struggling like I struggled like Amy struggled. We all struggled differently. You will struggle as a stepmom at some point. You either just have to decide, are you going to get the support or not? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And Amy, this conversation was amazing. This was probably one of the longest podcasts we've done in a while. So I'm glad that the listeners have stuck around with us for this long. And I just want to remind every single one of you ladies that are listening to this, because I'm assuming if you see the title, you're a lady listening to this because you're a stepmom and you're the only you that's ever been. You're the only you that will ever be, ever. So don't, give yourself permission to be the best stepmom that you can be. Give yourself permission to build yourself your happy home life and be the person in their life that you want to be, not what's dictated by the other person or the other adult or the other child or the other in-law or the other grandma or anybody. You build the happy home life that you want to build.
That's right.
Give yourself
That's
the
right.
permission to do it.
It's up to us to build that happily ever after.
It is. Well,
That's
Amy,
what
thank you so much for being a guest. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. 2023 is going to rock it out. So if you're a stepmom, 2023 is your year to change the family dynamic so that you are happy, they are happy, and everybody's happy. All right, everyone, we'll see you next week. And until next time, be you and be strong. See you. Bye-bye for now.
We hope you enjoyed our show today, as our guests shared their secrets on designing their life by taking the necessary leaps to expand their influence and attract the right people and clients into their lives. To start these easy steps for yourself, be sure to visit www.colleenbiggs.net/freebies to download the 7 ways to increase your exposure today.